This program is called Focus, and today we're focusing on PCWA. Those of you that do not know what that means, it's the Placer County Water Agency. With me, Andy Fecko. He's the general manager. He's been with the company 14 years. He manages 235 employees, and Andy, I might tell you that for what I'm else going to say now, 235 employees sounds way low for what you do. 8 treatment plants, 165 miles of canal and reservoirs, and 5 hydro, actually you have 2 reservoirs, and then 5 hydroelectric generation plants. That's a lot of real estate.
It's a big responsibility, Barry. Placer County Water Agency was formed actually same year as KAHI, 1957, so share that birthday. And we're here to serve the people of Placer County with water. That's why the agency was formed, really, was to advocate for the development of water resources in Placer County to make sure that this county had enough water to develop economically as it grew. And that's what we've done.
Andy, we know that you've been with the company 14 years. We mentioned that. There's more to Andy than that. Tell me about Andy before PCWA.
Yeah, so I'm a graduate of UC Davis. I went to school there. My family's had a long-time footprint in Placer County. My folks own property here. My grandparents own property in Lake Tahoe, and so I've been in and around the county for a long time. And I currently live with my family in the little community of Forest Hill. It's been a really great experience. We've been here a long time, and feel a deep responsibility for the mission here in Placer County.
Now you have children, right?
I do. I got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they're both in school up in Forest Hill, and my wife teaches up there, and so, just a kind of a hometown kid here.
We're in a serious drought right now, Andy, and
Yep.
It may be one of the worst, but we're definitely in one that's the timing is terrible. But tell me, when we have a drought like this, not our first one, what effect does that have on your company?
We've been really fortunate that the folks that came before me planned for that future. And so what we did when we formed the agency way back in the late 50s and then through the 1960s was we started building resources. And those 2 big reservoirs you mentioned earlier, French Meadows Reservoir and Hellhole Reservoir, which are on the Middle Fork American River and the Rubicon River, respectively, store a lot of water, 342,000 acre feet. And people always say, well, what does that mean to me? Well, an average household here in the county uses about a half an acre foot per year for a whole house. And so if you do the math on that, we have a lot of water in storage for not only the current residents of Placer County, but for future residents of Placer County. And so during drought times like this, we are, as an agency, because of the regulatory environment that we live in the state of California, we're asked to conserve water. And so we ask our residents to conserve water, not necessarily because we don't have enough water to serve them. That's not the case, but because we have to, because we live in the regulatory environment that we live in now. But we've been very fortunate that we have not only our 2 big reservoirs on those rivers, but we have a long-term arrangement with the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and they serve us water from their reservoirs that are north of Highway 80, up above Alta generally. And we have a whole nother source of supply from the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, who actually was the original water provider for the county of Placer. Many people can't remember back this far, but up until the late 1960s, PG&E was a water provider. Before we were formed as an agency, they had water treatment plants and they served ditch water and canal water to many parts of the county because they had developed a hydroelectric system and they needed to do something with the water after it had gone through the generators, and so they became a water purveyor. They turned over that responsibility to us in the late 1960s because they just didn't want to do it anymore, and so here we are.
Now, you're not just a water agency. I read your real estate list off when we opened this program. So you're into a lot of businesses. It's not just water. What else?
Principally, we pay a lot of bills, and we are not only a water provider, but when we were formed, we were supposed to be an advocate for water development within all of the county. And so one of the things we do on our stewardship side is help smaller districts serve their customers too. We have a lot of water districts in the county that are very, very small. In fact, we have, I think, almost 150 independent water districts that serve down to the neighborhood level, and so we try to help them. But also, as part of our Middle Fork project, we have hydroelectric operation, and so it's a big responsibility to make electricity from hydroelectric energy. Very expensive operation to build and maintain. And we do that every single day, and that helps pay the bills for maintaining those two big reservoirs, which are also very expensive to own and operate. And so, yeah, we are 235 employees, which does sound small. We rely on a lot of outside help. A lot of local businesses here in Placer County, construction companies, hauling companies, gravel companies, all of those satellite businesses we use to help multiply the force of our employment base. And so a lot of our local folks here are contractors that help us.
I read that you are working on some projects that are helping to manage the forest. And since we're sitting here in two of the worst fire days we've had in a long time, in Placer County and over in El Dorado County, what is the role you're taking on now in forest management?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Yeah, it's been horrible. From the river fire in Colfax, which directly affected our customers because we serve Colfax water, to now the fire down in El Dorado County, which is sending all this smoke into Placer. It's just a reminder of the condition that our forests are in, which is not good. So after the King Fire in 2014, which directly burned PCWA's water supply watershed in the Rubicon River, it burned a lot of the Rubicon River watershed, and we had to suffer the consequences of that, which consequences, for folks that don't know, are burned trees that come into our reservoir and are safety hazard for dams. And then the aftermath, when you get the next wet year, of all the silt coming in and filling in your reservoirs, our reservoirs, the people's reservoirs, which we then have to go and dredge to clean out because they don't store as much water, right? That's a direct cost that we suffer. Plus the long-term impacts to water quality of having this ash and silt run into your water system, which we then have to try to treat and deliver to households. All of those factors. Our board of directors, who, by the way, is a 5-member board, publicly elected board of directors, same districts as the county board of supervisors. So people that are listening to this show, they may get to vote for one of those board of directors. They decided that we were not going to have a catastrophic wildfire in our watershed again if we could help it. And so we took on 2 major initiatives. The first is in the watersheds of our major reservoirs, French Meadows and Hellhole. Actually, French Meadows is the one we're starting on. We decided we were going to take on a forest management project. We were going to spend money to try to thin the forest to a level that could sustain a wildfire without it becoming catastrophic. That's a key difference. The thing we're seeing in El Dorado County this week is a catastrophic wildfire. It's burning very hot, very fast, and when that fire is done, that watershed will be impacted for decades. Contrast that to fires that burn cooler in the understory that don't get into the crowns of the trees. A forest can survive that and thrive afterward. That's the kind of landscape that we're trying to promulgate in the French Meadows watershed. So we've taken on, along with our partners at the County of Placer, who have been invaluable, the Nature Conservancy, and the U.S. Forest Service, along with some university help, have taken on 23,000 acres in the French Meadows watershed above that reservoir to thin it to a point where it can survive a catastrophic wildfire and come back. And that's the key thing, is come back. And so we're about halfway through that project right now. We've got another 3 to 4 years of that to go. And when we're done, we hope that what we're seeing in El Dorado County will not occur in the people's watershed there above the French Meadows project.
Now, the management of the forest has been a long and a hot subject for the last 30 years in the state. And we know of only one other management attempt, which is up around the Tahoe Basin. That was initiated somewhat politically by our local representative, Tom McClintock, and others. And so there's only 2 of you now that sounds like you're actually managing the forest. The other thing that I noted is that 50% of the forests in the state of California are actually owned by the federal government. So if you're successful, do you think maybe the federal government may figure out a way to use you and others to do this kind of management? Because obviously it's a political football right now.
Yeah, it's been tough. So you said 30 years, and I think that's right. So I tell the story this way, Barry. We were in an era where we were probably logging too much, too intensely, with too many impacts. And then we went into the last 30 years of not doing anything or doing very, very little. What I think PCWA is trying to do, what the Tahoe Basin's trying to do with, I'll say, Yuba Water Agency and the North Yuba Basin is now starting to do, is to try to find a middle ground. We can't do too much and we can't do not enough. We have to try to find this middle ground. And I think the Tahoe National Forest has just been really, really excellent. And by the way, our regional forester who ran California is now the Forest Service chief in Washington, D.C., and he talks about the French Meadows Project as a model, as a goal for the rest of the state. And what he means by that is it can't just be the Forest Service because they just do not have the funding to do this kind of work everywhere. So they've got to find partners, and that partnership model is really what the French Meadows story with the county and PCWA and the Nature Conservancy is all about. And what they want to do is spread that to other watersheds, right? Above Shasta is a big watershed. Lake Shasta, biggest storage reservoir in the state. It needs this kind of work. Above Lake Oroville, you're seeing the fires above Oroville. We had whole communities above Lake Oroville destroyed, and now the Dixie Fire is going to become the largest wildfire in the state. That's above Lake Oroville. All of our watersheds need this kind of work, and what it's going to take is partnership. Water agencies can be a small cog in that wheel. For instance, for us, the water agency and the county together have spent about $1 million to do this work. We've been able to leverage that to other funding sources to get about $12 million in. So you think about that's a great ratio. Less than 10% is coming from the local community, but we're able to build a project that does that 12 times over. And so we think that's a great success story. I think the Forest Service wants to duplicate that in other watersheds.
Now, can you sell this lumber and can you put that money back into the project?
That's exactly what we do. So we're doing this thing called ecological forest thinning, which is that in between. It's not clear cutting and it's not doing nothing. It's selecting the right trees out of every acre of land to get the density of the fuel down. And when we take those trees out, some of them go to biomass utilization. Down here in Lincoln, we have 2 biomass plants. We send the biomass down there. Some of them go for saw logs, right? And some of those trees are just too small, and we grind them up and reincorporate them into the soil on site. A combination of all those things helps to pay for the project, right, and offset our costs.
Sounds like a good plan and maybe a great model. So
Yes.
We'll wait and see where that goes.
And we have more projects coming. We're going to do more projects like that. Can I talk to you about the other community protection project that the county and I are involved in? The county and PCW are involved in. City of Auburn's a great example. Town of Forest Hill is a great example. We provide a grant program to the resource conservation districts, the fire safe councils, and the fire departments, about $250,000 a year, where they go out and find private landowners who are willing to treat their land for fire safety. And they find matching funds from the federal and state governments, these fire safe councils. Luana Dowling, great person up in Forest Hill who does this work. And we provide some grant funding separate and apart from the watershed work to protect communities. Auburn has benefited from it. Forest Hill has benefited from it. A bunch of stuff in between. Iowa Hill, Michigan Bluff. These are all little communities that we're able to put money on the ground, hire local contractors to clear private property. We think it's been a great success.
The future. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yep.
Well, before I do that, let me ask you this one other question about where we are now. We're a political division, but we're also a water division. Mm-hmm. And so how does this stack up against other counties throughout the rest of the state? Are they at a position where they can do what you do?
So we're very, very fortunate because Placer County is, through good governance for a long time, has come up with a model where we have adequate funding to kickstart these initiatives, right? And the water agency has customers, and so we have some capital we can put at this. And so Placer County is unique in that way. I think Nevada County has some of these capabilities, and I know that my friends over at the Nevada Irrigation District are working very, very hard on similar programs. Jennifer Hansen's their new general manager up there, and she's doing really fabulous work to try to do the same kinds of things we're doing in this county. El Dorado County, similarly positioned, they're going to try this same thing. I think Placer is unique in that we have enough residents, enough business base, enough tax base to be able to have a sustainable county, which is what I think residents want, right? They want to live in a sustainable place. That means we provide our own water supply, right? We make our own energy. We live where we grow our food. I mean, those are all parts of that sustainability part, and I think that is a unique factor of Placer County.
You mentioned a moment ago about a grant program.
Grant program, yep.
Now, you have more than one grant program. You were kind of focusing on the grant program that you were talking about at the time, but now you have other grant programs. I've been reading about that. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So the big thing for our customers, our water utility customers, right, is a rebate program to be more water efficient, right? And so what we do as a water agency is we provide water to homes and businesses and farms, a lot of farms. And what we want to do is stretch every acre foot of water we provide for maximum beneficial use. And what does that mean? That means that we try to make sure that we don't waste any water delivering water to you, but then when you get it to your residence or your farm, we want to make sure that you can put that water to maximum beneficial use. And the way we can help do that is through a rebate program. And so our rebate programs, for instance, if you have lawn that's purely decorative and you're not using it for anything really sort of beneficial and you want to replace it with low water use landscaping, we got a rebate program for that. If you've got old appliances, old washing machines that use a lot of water, and we want you to wash your clothes, we want you to have clean clothes, but we want you to use the most efficient washing machine that you can get, and we're going to help you buy one by providing you a rebate. And so this year in particular, because it's a dry year, you said drought, our board recognized that and doubled the funding for our rebate programs. It's a limited time thing, and it's going to end in September, and so we're really driving hard. And I know that our people tell me that our applications have doubled for that rebate program. It's still ongoing. People can still get to it. There are two ways to do it. Go to pcwa.net if you want to apply. There's an application process there. If you're not on the computer and you want to call us, 530-823-4850. Customer service rep will answer the phone. Tell them you're interested in the rebate program. They're going to get you all the information you need. We think it's going to be tremendously successful.
Andy, we talked about the storage situation, which you have up here, which is a gift basically compared to maybe some of the other areas.
Yep.
But you also mentioned on something that I didn't know about, and that is the underground water situation that's under Sacramento City. Tell me about that, because it sounds like you have a plan on using that, which is Mother Nature's reservoir, if you will. So you don't have to build a dam and you don't have to put pumps in there. Basically, you have a Mother Nature reservoir, which you're not basically using that much yet.
That's right. And so this is a regional effort. So PCWA, we're up here in the foothills. We stretch all the way down to Lincoln, but significant portion of the Sacramento region overlays what's called an aquifer. What's an aquifer? An aquifer can be thought of as a big bowl underground, and it's filled with pretty coarse materials because our river systems run into the valley and they deposit these rocks down in the valley, and it's hundreds of feet deep. And that aquifer underneath Sacramento holds about twice as much water as Folsom Reservoir, if you can believe that. And so it's a huge untapped resource for this region. And so what we're doing, working with our partners where the water agencies are down in the valley, is to supply those agencies more surface water in wet years when it's abundant, and then have those folks rely on groundwater during times of drought, right? It becomes your savings account. And it's free. Now you got to pump it up out of the ground. Of course, you got to put wells in and stuff, but it doesn't require a very expensive, building a new reservoir on a river or doing any of that kind of stuff, because it's there for you. As you said, Mother Nature's provided it. Let's use it. But it takes regional cooperation. And that's where the 21 water agencies that are in and around the Sacramento region are really very, very focused right now on building out the infrastructure necessary to share water, surface water and groundwater, amongst each other, so that we can get through droughts like this with minimal pain to our residents, our farms, our businesses.
Now, I read somewhere, I think yesterday, that you've already started this process now during this drought, that since Folsom Lake is so low and it's below some of the outputs that they use, now you're going to use some of their well water. So you're pumping already in some. So that's a decision you can make?
Yeah, exactly. Working with our partners. So, so here's an example, Barry. PCWA supplies water to the city of Roseville. The city of Roseville overlays part of that aquifer. And in this year, what we've done with Roseville is they've said we can buy 25,000 acre feet from PCWA, but this year we're going to turn on our wells, use a little bit of that savings account that we've built up over the years in that aquifer, and we'll offset that surface water use, and PCWA will keep that water in storage for Roseville for a future year, right? It's a partnership. And so they've turned on their wells, they're blending that water with other surface water supplies, and they're continuing to serve their customers in Roseville. It's a really elaborate but actually quite simple way of sharing water and using those two resources, surface water and groundwater, to meet everyone's needs. And that's a key part of future growth and development. So I said, our forefathers built this project, these reservoirs, to make sure that the county had enough water to develop economically. And that's really what we're doing right now, is mapping out that future, that sustainable future for not only our current residents, but we know there are more residents coming to this county. It's a great place to live. People want to live here. There will be more residents in the future. How do we supply them water in a way that's environmentally sustainable, fiscally sustainable, and relies on all of our resources, groundwater and surface water? That's our mission.
Basically, your customers become also a supplier.
Yeah, they become part of our solution, right? And that's water efficiency, but that's also these projects that we're building.
Is this unique to the Sacramento area, or other sections of California have the same thing?
I think we're unique in this way. We're unique in that we're a major metropolitan area, if you think of the Sacramento region, that has 2 million people in it, that cooperates to an extent that we cooperate to an extent where we can use these resources cooperatively and share them in a way that makes us more sustainable. Think about that Sacramento region, Barry. If you think, where is it positioned? I think it's the most sustainable major metropolitan area in the entire state. What do I mean by that? We generate all of the electricity we need to run that metropolitan area between SMUD and PCWA and NID in the region, where we supply all the water. We don't have to import it from anywhere, like faraway places like Los Angeles. They have to import all their water. We have all the water resources we need right here. We grow our own food. The Sacramento region is surrounded by agriculture. We grow our own food here. We're at the hub of major rail transportation, right? It's a complete package here. And that is the unique aspect of this region. PCWA, the foothill communities, we're a part of that. But the region, I think, is unique almost anywhere in the United States as having a place that can stand on its own 2 feet. Does that make sense to you, Barry?
It does. Absolutely. It's amazing. I have never known all of that, so you brought some real education to me today. The other thing that I've worried about over the past, and that is when you get a political situation where they say, we're going to force you to pump water south into the areas that don't have it. How do you protect yourself from that? In other words, how do you keep the bad guys from taking our water away and sending it south?
Boy, we've been thinking about that since we were formed in 1957, right? And every year that struggle gets more real. And so first is, the way you defend yourself is by being a responsible player. And that's what we're doing with our sustainability initiatives and all the rest. But at the same time is, you got to be really strong on the legal front and on your regulatory front. And we have a team of people inside PCWA that thinks about how to defend this region's water use, how to defend our water supplies. We had some major victories, on that over the last decade. For instance, we relicensed our hydroelectric project. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission every 50 years has to get you a new license. Major effort. Took us 7 years. We spent a lot of money on it. At the end, we got a new license that allowed us to operate, to store water, and to supply our folks water. And we had a public process here that we ran in Placer County, right here in Auburn. Everyone ended up happy in that process, including the local stakeholders. It took a lot of effort, but it can be done. It takes a lot of thinking and a lot of defense to make that work.
Andy Fecko, ladies and gentlemen, he's the general manager now with 14 years in this company. Again, 235 employees running 8 treatment plants, 165 miles of canal, and then 2 reservoirs. Plus, now we know that there's another big reservoir that Mother Nature is giving you, and you're just starting to play with it. And 5 hydroelectric generation plants. What's the future? Where do you see us 10 years from now?
Yeah, great question. So the future in Placer County, let me start with energy. We're looking at a lot of opportunities along with Pioneer Energy at how do we continue to build out renewable energy resources in Placer County. We've got some resources up here that we can put to use. We really want to focus on that. We've got some initiatives coming on that. I'm hoping that a decade from now, our forest management model that we have at French Meadows is going to spread to other watersheds that around us. And I hope that NID, and I think NID is going to do the same thing. And we're going to have a sustainable fuel source, right? So we're going to do all this work in the forest. I'm hoping that we're going to have some biomass facilities around us that can take advantage of that fuel source and make renewable energy out of it. I think water is we're going to have a lot of new infrastructure that's going to allow us to not have to worry about drought as much. These extreme dry years like we're experiencing this year, I'm hoping that the infrastructure we're going to build right here in Ophir, California, we're going to build a new water treatment plant. So your number will go up to number 9. And that Ophir water treatment plant is going to serve the new development that we see coming outside of Lincoln and outside of Roseville. We are planning for the future right now in building that so that water treatment plant is in place when those new residents show up. And I think it's going to be really good. And then I'm hoping that our communities, places like Auburn, places like Newcastle, Ophir, that have problems with wildfire are going to be better off. And through our grant programs, I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to make those communities a little bit more fire safe as we go forward.
Andy, thank you. The focus here at KAHI this week has been on PCWA, Placer County Water Agency.